Legislatures in most states in this country are meeting right now. They usually start in January, February, and meet through the spring. That's certainly no exception down in my home state of Louisiana. And in most states, you have legislators that are meeting all over the country. And education seems to be the battle cry in these legislatures meeting now, what to do about bringing in more accountability, particularly with teachers. Teachers seem to be under the gun of being more accountable. And I agree that there should be more review of teachers. We've got a seniority system in this country to where teachers that have been there for 20 or 30 years get priorities, get seniority. Young, bright teachers who are alert, that want to make teaching their career, want to make a difference, get bounced out when budget cuts come along. So that doesn't seem right, and there certainly should be much more accountability in how that's battled out. There's also a push for vouchers. I don't have a problem with vouchers if it's handled right. In the voucher program, what you do is give the parents, in effect, a voucher they can take to a private school, a parochial school, a public school, and schools have to rise or fall in the monies they have based on that voucher. It gets very, very expensive because you're basically supporting a three-tier school system. Then you've got the charter schools that have been very successful, particularly down in my part of the country, to where a lot of the red tape is pushed aside. You basically let the principal take control. The principal can hire and fire teachers at will and pretty much run that school in a vein that he or she thinks best with the support of parents. Now that's where this other element comes in. I don't hear much talk in schools, rather in the debates of legislators throughout this country, about parental authority, parental accountability. We don't seem to be that concerned about putting all the burdens on the teacher. And teachers should have some burdens, but teachers today, the role has changed dramatically. The teachers not only teach, they become a disciplinarian. They have to be a babysitter. They have to deal with problem kids. They have to do with less performing kids, and they're stuck with a whole mirage of things that maybe teachers in the past didn't deal with. And I'm worried about the fact that parents are not held accountable. We have kids that go home, aren't getting direction on their homework. Weekends, they sit in front of that TV. We are a country that kids watch more TV than any other country in the world. We're more obese in our kids than any other place in the world. Our kids aren't active. They're not creative. In the summer, they're not doing the things that often you and I did. I'm not saying you have to go to a computer camp, but we don't seem to have parents taking on their responsibility as maybe we did in the past. And I don't know the answer. I don't know, do you fine the parents if kids are tardy or if kids don't show up for school? How do you hold those parents accountable? That's not being debated enough. And you can argue, well, and this is, there's some truth in this, average student out there, C+, B-, needs to have the proper emphasis. That child is going to be the leader of tomorrow. That child is not going to move away, be here and start a job, be job creators and help run our communities. And we can't spend too much on the dysfunctional kid. Often, though, how you define dysfunctional children, I'll give you a prime example. In my hometown of Baton Rouge, we have some of these community homes where 8 or 9 young boys or girls will live. They're there because the families don't want them, don't have no responsibility. They've been abused kids, and often they move from home to home. I had a sister-in-law who said we should adopt some of these homes as a family project, and instead of giving Christmas presents one year, we pooled our resources to help these kids. Went in and bought, first of all, first thing I saw when we went in was the kids didn't have any computers. Now, you and my kid goes home in the evening. They've got a computer as a resource to do their studies, to do their homework, to write their term papers. These poor kids didn't have that resource. Maybe they got a little time at school. Maybe they could go to the public library where the kid with the computer at home, the internet access, gets readily available that information that the underprivileged kid doesn't get. So that was a problem. And we rectified that by spending some of the Christmas money on putting computers in, which made a huge difference. And again, these are throwaway kids often who've been in several homes over a period of years. Show you how do you define a throwaway kid? One evening I was coming back in. I'd flown out of the local airport. When I came back into land, one of these groups' home was closer to the airport. So I stopped by to visit, and most of the kids had gone off for a weekend with other family members or maybe with some friends. There was one little boy sitting over in the corner, 12 years old. His name was Joshua. He'd been in 5 different homes in 6 years. If ever you wanted to profile a kid on paper as a throwaway kid, it would be him. His parents didn't care about him. He bounced from home to home, happened to be African American, but that didn't make any difference. You had white kids, black kids, all in the same circumstance. And so I came in, and most of the kids were gone. This little boy, Joshua, was sitting over in the corner, and he was reading. I said, Joshua, you're not watching TV? You're not on the computer? He said, no, sir, I'm not. I said, Joshua, what are you reading? 12 years old, 5 homes in 6 years, a kid that we would profile on paper in the formula as a throwaway kid. Joshua, what are you reading? Held up his book. It was Romeo and Juliet. He was reading Shakespeare. This ain't no throwaway kid, folks. This kid could make a difference. If he's reading Shakespeare at 12 years old, at 8:30 on a Friday night, then that boy has potential. How do you merge all that in, particularly when you don't have the parental responsibility? It's a huge challenge for our legislators, huge challenge for our educational leaders, but I think that where you have parents, they should have a very active role. One more story to tell you before I shut down. I used to be a big shot politician in Louisiana. Now I'm just an average guy out there living like I should be living all the time. I had to give a speech up in the northern part of my state. I believe I was insurance commissioner, maybe a secretary of state at the time. There was a parent-teacher conference. My young son, my 4th child, had a conference with a teacher, and so I told my wife, well, look, why don't you go ahead and sit in on the conference? I've done this before, and you sit in and talk to the teacher. And she did. When she got there with my son, the teacher said, well, where's Mr. Brown? She said, well, you know, he's a state official. He has to give a speech, and I'm going to tell him the information you tell me and take it back from there. She says, no, that's not how we're going to do this. She said, I know he's important and his business is important, but there is nothing more important than his son. He needs to be here for the parent-teacher conference because I want to be sure that when this young boy comes home, he's getting the right guidance, he's doing his homework, he's got good study habits, he's making the best use of his weekends and summers. I want to talk to you guys about that. We need to work as a team. This is not just me as a teacher. This is us as a team raising your son. Well, she gave me that. I was very embarrassed, and I certainly made the next conference, and I complimented the teacher for taking that approach. She was right. She was dead right. There was nothing more important for me than my child, and I should have been there. The next parent-teacher conference I was, and hopefully it made a difference. Bottom line is, there's a lot of components to successful educational programming. Yes, there's teacher accountability, but there's parental responsibility, parental accountability. We can do a lot more in that area. I'll be right back after this message.